Hello, Magic players and collectors. Welcome back to the Land Library. I'm your librarian, and in this episode of latest Loadout, I'm going over Edge of Eternities. This set released August 1st of 2025 and is a standard set. It continues the main storyline in a new plane called the Edge, but the Edge is not a typical plane. Most planes are basically a planet or continent, but the Edge is a whole solar system, maybe even a galaxy. This full-blown Space Odyssey-themed set is packed with spaceships, aliens, a giant black hole, and planetary-sized lands to match. Just like always, the first thing on this list is the basics, and boy are these basics beautiful. There's two prints each of regular basics, which look so good, and a set of absolutely breathtaking full arts. Not only that, but galaxy foils are back, making these full arts pop even more. Actually, every borderless in the set has galaxy foils, not just the full art basics, but I'm not gonna necessarily be bringing it up every time. There also is a print of Wastes in the Commander set, but it doesn't have new art, unfortunately. Or a galaxy foil, because it doesn't have like a full art or borderless. I'm also quite excited to say that the Shock lands are getting reprints, and not even as like special guest cards or anything, main set, which means they're standard legal again. Well, like half of them, anyway. And not even enemies or allies, it's mixed, with Breeding Pool, Godless Shrine, Sacred Foundry, Stomping Grounds, and Watery Grave making their comebacks. These are dual colors that come in tapped unless you pay 2 life, and they have basic land types. They also come with matching borderless arts called the Viewport arts, which are super thematic, but in my opinion are a bit of a downgrade in art. But there's some great new arts on several returning lands in the Commander set, and just like the basics, always coming first for the main set, the first Commander land is Command Tower. This land, of course, taps for a mana of any color in your Commander's color identity. And for another superly common reprinted land, Terramorphic Expanse. This land just tap and sacks to search for any basic and put it in play tapped. Then we have a land we've seen a few times, but not quite so often, Fabled Passage. This is another wildcard fetch land, tapping and sacking to search out any basic and put it in play tapped. But if you then have 4 or more lands in play, you proceed to untap the basic that you fetched. And on the topic of fetch lands, Mountain Valley is getting a reprint with new art. This is a tap fetch land, so it enters tapped and can tap and sack to search for any mountain or forest and put it in play. These do not have to be a basic, it searches for the types. The tap fetch lands are overshadowed a bit by the classic fetch lands, receiving about half as many prints, so it's nice to see them not only give it a reprint, but with its first new art ever. And last but not least, Battlefield Forge got some new art. This is a classic Boros Pain land, tapping for a colorless, or tapping for its colored mana at the cost of 1 damage to yourself. And that leads us into Rapid Fire. So, in the Rapid Fire, we've got Adakar Wastes, Ancient Den, Bojuka Bog, Buried Ruin, Cabaretti Courtyard, Canyon Slough, Cascade Bluffs, Cinderglade, Clifftop Retreat, Dackmore Salvage, Escape Tunnel, Evolving Wilds, Exotic Orchard, Glacial Fortress, Great Furnace, Irrigated Farmland, Karn's Bastion, Carpulson Forest, Llanowar Wastes, Lonely Sandbar, Maestro's Theater, Myriad Landscape, Mystic Monastery, Razortide Bridge, Riveteer's Outlook, Rocky Tar Pit, Rugged Prairie, Rustvale Bridge, Seat of the Synod, Secluded Steppe, Sheltered Thicket, Shivan Reef, Silver Bluff Ridge, Skycloud Expanse, Smoldering Marsh, Spire of Industry, Sulphur Falls, Sulphurous Springs, Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Epiphany, Temple of Triumph, the Mycosynth Gardens, Twilight Mire, and Viridescent Bog. Normally, I'd move on to new lands after the rapid fire section, but this time we need to talk about Stellar Sights. Stellar Sights is a bonus sheet, or a subset, which isn't really that rare. Just last set, Final Fantasy had its bonus sheet, called Through the Ages, and I covered Outlaws of Thunder Junction a while back with its Big Score bonus sheet, but Stellar Sights is a little different. While those other ones have a couple of lands in them, Stellar Sites is a bonus sheet of exclusively lands, 45 of them to be exact, each coming in two versions and each having galaxy foils. But 45 was a bit much to cover individually in the main section, but I can't just throw them in rapid fire, so here they are getting their own section that I'm talking over, as you can see. I figured it might be a better use of this time to talk about a couple of extra things instead of just rattling off names, such as Stellar Sights is approximately 1 in 8 packs. They're not too rare. I don't know if that's like specific numbers that is supposed to be there, but it seems to be after, people have opened packs so far that you can get a Stellar Sights in approximately 1 in every 8 packs. However, collector packs will guarantee a Stellar Sights. And the second print for each of these, the poster art, is exclusively in collector packs. So every collector pack will have at least a Stellar Sights of any print, but you can potentially get a higher rarity, such as a Galaxy Foil or those poster arts. And actually, Galaxy Foils are also exclusive to collector packs. So even if you get a regular Stellar Sights in a play booster, you can't get a Galaxy Foil. You can get a normal foil, but Galaxy Foils and poster arts, so thus also poster art Galaxy Foils, are exclusive to collector packs. And that's pretty much all I had to say, so I guess editing me will figure this out, but if there's time left, it'll just be silent. There are several new lands in this set, even some new lands in the Commander set, which is pretty cool, but starting with the main set, we've got Command Bridge. This land enters tapped, but also requires you to tap any other untapped permanent too, or it immediately sacrifices itself. And then it can tap for any color. Then there's Secluded Starforge, a land that has 3 tap abilities. It can tap for a colorless, at sorcery speed, can pay 2 generic and tap, to then also tap any number of your artifacts and add power equal to the number of artifacts you tapped to a target creature until end of turn. Or, for 5 generic, it taps to make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. And Secluded Starforge has not just a borderless version, but also a Japan Showcase version, which is the first time a land has gotten one of these showcase prints. Next up, a land out of the Commander set, Eumidian Hatchery, which can tap for a black at the cost of a life, but then also puts a hatchling counter on it, and it has the additional ability that if it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, it makes a 1/1 black flying insect token for every hatchling counter on it. And this card has an extended art. Now for some cycles, or at least parts of cycles, because our next two lands are new additions to an old cycle. Festering Thicket and Glittering Massif are the Golgari and Boros colored bicycle lands first introduced in Amonkhet. These lands have basic land types, enter tapped, and have cycling too. And these also have extended arts. I'm not sure why they made only 2 of the enemy colored ones, especially after waiting 8 years since the Allied cycle was introduced, but they did the same thing with an even older cycle with 2 new battle lands. Radiant Summit and Vernal Fen. These battle lands are more lands with basic land types that come in tapped unless you have at least 2 basic lands. Originally, these were introduced 10 years ago in Battle for Zendikar, and these also have extended arts and are the same colors as the last pair. But now it's time for a full cycle of monocolored lands, the planets. These all come in tapped, tap for their color, and have subtype planet. Planet is a brand new subtype that also comes with a new mechanic. The first time a land subtype has had an associated mechanic since the basics, which is pretty awesome. But anyways, planets can be stationed, which is done by tapping a creature to add station counters equal to that creature's power to said planet. Then, at certain thresholds, they gain additional abilities. For all of these planets, it's 12, but there are also spaceships which can be stationed, and those have station abilities at various numbers. The ability of Adagia, Windswept Bastion, is for 3 generic and a white. It taps to make a legendary token copy of any artifact or enchantment you control. The ability of Evando, Waking Haven, is for 1 green. It taps to make a green mana for each creature you control. The ability of Kavaran, Memorial World, is for 1 generic, a red, and sacrificing another land. It taps to create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token, and gives +1/+0 and haste to all of your creatures until the end of turn. The ability of Susur Secundi, Void Altar, is for 1 generic, a black, and 2 life. It taps to sacrifice a creature and draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power. And the ability of the final planet, Uthros Titanic Godcore, is for 1 blue. It taps to make a blue mana equal to the number of artifacts you control. All 5 of these also have viewport borderless versions, and that's it for the new lands. Let's get some of the stinkers out of the way first. Secluded Starforge is extremely circumstantial. Its ability to create a robot token is way too much mana, and there are much better, even repeatable ways to make robots, and its ability to give a creature the power boost by tapping artifacts is just too clunky to get much use. It can pair well with some of the artifacts in the set, like Cryogen Relic and Melded Moxite, or equipment cards, since all of those function normally, regardless of being tapped or not, so it's actually pretty decent for drafting. But in constructed formats, when you have access to much more options, it really falls off. It maybe has a place in an equipment heavy deck, but not much else. Next up, Cavaron is also pretty rough. Making a robot, giving all creatures haste, and giving them 1/0 until the end of turn is actually pretty decent effects, but coming at the cost of sacrificing a land absolutely plummets its playability. Without a bunch of extra lands to spare, Cavaron just sits there, being a red mana source, not even really worth stationing, and if all you're going to use it for is red mana, you might as well just not play it and play a mountain. Taveron could go in some commander decks, like a Hazazon Desert deck that can replay the Sacrificed Deserts from the graveyard, and combo with the effects of like Dunes of the Dead to get extra value from sacrificing something, but just isn't really viable in Standard. Eumidian Hatchery could also potentially pair with Cavaron, but since it's a commander land, this combo definitely doesn't affect its Standard viability, and Eumidian Hatchery itself is a bit of an odd land that only goes in certain things. It feels like it should go quite well in a proliferate deck to stack extra counters on it, but since it doesn't have any way to self-sacrifice, it could potentially just sit there indefinitely unless you run a bunch of self-land destruction. It's not like your opponent is going to just destroy it for you while it's stacked with counters. And in a deck where you can sacrifice a bunch of your own lands, you're not as likely to be able to get so many counters on it by like proliferating in the first place. It's kind of hard to balance both of those things. I'm sure there's some decks that can make it work, but it's pretty niche. Next up, Command Bridge. This land is painfully mediocre. It can make any color of mana for free, which is pretty good, but coming in tapped no matter what and having a pseudo casting cost of tapping something makes it even slower and potentially leaves yourself vulnerable depending on what you tap. It's not even playable turn 1 without the help of something like a 0 mana artifact or a ley line. Command Bridge isn't necessarily bad, but it definitely gets outclassed by lands like Starting Town in Standard and Command Tower in Commander. Now for some decent lands, All four of the new additions to old cycles are pretty fine. Bicycle lands and battle lands are both very middle of the pack, but kind of on the better side because they have basic land types, which is pretty great, but that's mostly all they're doing. Bicycles have the extra option of cycling, and battles have a potential way to come in untapped, but they aren't bringing anything crazy to the table. But still, mid-range duels are nice to get. Then, Adagia, it copies enchantments and artifacts but makes legendary copies, so you can't copy anything more than once. Even still, one extra copy of things can make some huge boosts to your board, especially in Commander where you have access to even more options and you only get one of everything. You want double Soul Ring, you want double Anointed Procession, double Gauntlet of Might. Adagia can go pretty crazy in Commander, but it's super useless in Standard right now, at least at the meta level, because there's not much artifacts or enchantments for it to really double. Also, since you can already run multiple copies in Standard, that one extra copy is much less valuable, even at lower levels where you have more targets. This does mean that Uthros is basically in the same boat, though. It goes crazy in artifact-based commander decks, being a bit of a weaker, more balanced Tolarian Academy that isn't banned, but there's just not enough artifacts in meta-level Standard for it to see play there. However, lower-level Standard doesn't have this problem, and it gets a ton of value in drafting too. Now, Sasur Secundi, this land is super good and has some totally broken combos. It's great at turning big, hard to use creatures like Bygone Colossus or the Ancient One into huge amounts of card draw, or supporting cards like Sephiroth in sacrificing decks, both in Standard and Commander. It's carved a nice niche for itself in like mid-tier meta decks, but it's not anything too crazy. But there is still an even better land because Evando is extremely powerful. This is basically a Gaia's Cradle, but with extra steps. And since everything uses creatures, it basically can go in any deck and still provide good value. Although, since its strength comes from having lots of creatures already in play, it is considered a win more card, which is while you're already ahead, it makes you win even faster, but it doesn't help you while you're behind. Due to its win more status, it's not seeing a lot of standard meta play outside of maybe like sideboards, but it is seeing massive success in Commander and lower leveled Standard. But there's one more thing that's even better in this set, and it's not even new. It's the Shocks. Shocklands are easily one of the absolute best dual colors ever. And with them being brought back into Standard, they've immediately been added into basically every meta deck that at least uses those color combos that got printed. It's not necessarily changing the meta or anything, but they are instantly just meta level. They're everywhere. For Standard, this is a solid 5 out of 5. This set introduces new meta level lands, brings back some meta classics, and even has lands that might not be meta, but can still kick ass in non competitive Standard. For Commander, this is also a 5 out of 5, with new mid range dual colors in the Commander set and powerhouses like Adagia and Uthros in the main set. It's easy to say that this set is bringing in some heat to Commander. The theme, 5 out of 5. Everything is super on theme. Planets, port view arts, stellar sights, even galaxy foils coming back. Not a single land is off theme, and there's a ton of them. The art, 10 out of 10. This set has everything. Amazing art on regular prints. Borderless arts galore, especially with all of the stellar sights. The first Japan showcase land ever. A land exclusive special foil. They didn't even forget to throw in a few extended art. It really has everything you could ask for and more. And we're giving it a bonus point for a new subtype. Honestly, kinda surprised they made new subtypes in 2 sets in a row, but here we are again. Overall, that is a 26 out of 25. Wow, right after the first perfect score in the last set, Edge of Eternities comes in to dethrone Final Fantasy with not only a perfect score, but a maximum score. This set truly has everything: powerful lands, a new subtype, a fully land bonus sheet, and special prints no land has seen before. If you've made it this far in the video, please drop a like for turn and subscribe for more land-filled content. If I missed anything, got anything wrong, or you just have questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next latest Loadout when the Spider-Man set comes out.